Hi everybody, welcome to my History of Games and RPG series where I turn a spotlight on a moment in history. I do this through a publication, usually a book, from which I read, quote and discuss. And today I'm using You Are the Hero, a history of fighting fantasy game books by Jonathan Green, who was a fan and author of fighting fantasy and, a historian of the series. Now, this book details the whole history of fighting fantasy, although there are some new books that have been published very recently which don't feature in here. But today I want to ask the question, what was the first proper solo player game book? Now, we're going to look at what that criteria is through the book, through what is an actual game book, because the Fighting Fantasy series introduced something which was quite amazing and interesting, and it certainly, as a child, as a 10-year-old, I engaged with it with a fervour I hadn't experienced before in my life. Okay, we've skipped to chapter 2. The Warlock of Firetop Mountain, the Magical Quest begins. Now, Magical Quest being the original name of the Warlock of Firetop Mountain, written by Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone. The concept of the gamebook is that the reader participates in an event of the story, making choices that ultimately influence the course of the narrative. In many such examples of interactive fiction, such as Fighting Fantasy series, the reader is cast as the hero of the adventure, which is related in the second person present tense, but being forced to turn backwards and forwards through the book to a different number, jumbled paragraphs. So it's the standard format. You get turned to a page and you read what happens, and you get turned to another number and another page somewhere in the book. It's not a linear format. It's a kind of a jumbled format where you turn from one page to another. Although interactive fiction had existed before the publication of the Warlock of Firetop Mountain, having been toyed with as far back as 1940s, there had never been such a thing as a game book before. So Jonathan Green clearly makes a statement here that this was the first game book. What does he mean by that? In the US, the Tunnels and Trolls role-playing system, designed by Ken St. Andre, published solitaire adventures beginning with Buffalo Castle, written by Rick Loomis in 1976. But these were solo RPG supplements rather than actual books. That's a clear definition. Edward Picard and R.A. Montgomery's Choose Your Own Adventure titles appeared around the same time. Although these were books, they did not feature any game rules. What we're talking about here is the Choose Your Own Adventure. You can see here, this is the Abominable Snowman. Picked this up a while back. I collect all these sorts of games books. And what you do is you would go in. Right, we have a general story, and you would have maybe a map like so, and you'd have one. You are a mountain climber. 3 years ago, you spent the summer at climbing school in mountains of Colorado. Your instructor said that you had a natural skill as a climber. You made rapid progress, and by the end of the summer, you were leading difficult rock and ice climbs. That summer, you became close friends with a boy named Carlos. The two of you made good climbing team. Last year, you and he were chosen to join an international team. The expedition made it up to the top 2 unclimbed peaks in South America. One night on the expedition, the group was seated around the cook tent at the base camp. The expedition leader, Franz, told stories of, he talks about a Yeti. And then it says go to page 4. Right, so the story continues, and you have to decide to cancel your meeting with Runel and search for Carlos, turn to page 5 because something's happened to Carlos, or if you feel that Carlos is okay and go ahead with your plan to meet Runel, turn to page 6. So you get a sequence of pages that you turn to at the bottom. Okay, but you are just a person experiencing the story. Now you can die, or things can happen that end your journey, and they have nice illustrations here. R.A. Montgomery, as says in the text here. So this is one of those early ones, but no rules. So you just dive in, read. Okay. not so much a game, more of an experience. So they'd no feature any game rules. It was Fighting Fantasy that created the gamebook genre, going on to popularise the genre in the UK and Commonwealth, and its success was certainly responsible for the glut of imitations, many of them horribly inferior in quality, and other publishers rushed out after seeing the level of success Puffin Books were enjoying with the format. So they created the Warlock of Firetop Mountain. As you can see here, this is signed by Russ Nicholson, because I saw him at one of the Fighting Fantasy Fest conferences and had a good chat with him. He's one of my idols. And you see at the beginning here we have rules, battles, luck, escaping, skill, stamina, equipping, hints on playing, and a character sheet. This is the first time this was done in a gamebook, a solo player gamebook. You've got rumours and then you go in. Wow. So the illustrations really captured my imagination and got me reading. This gamebook. It was because it was interactive. You actually felt like you were part of that experience, which was totally awesome. Now, some of you are going to say, well, there was another type of gamebook, which was that the first one, and that is, we'll skip to this section here, the Not So Endless Quest. Right, so in June 1982, the first 4 titles of TSR's Endless Quest books was printed in the USA, 1 month before the publication of The Warlock of Firetop Mountain. 1 month. In the UK, a total of 36 books were released between 1982 and 1987, with another 13 titles being added from 1994 to 1996. Not to mention the various spin-off series that were published in between. Despite being produced by TSR, the Guardians of Dungeons & Dragons franchise at the time, the Endless Quest books were not game books. They were modelled on the Choose Your Own Adventure style. So, as we were showing before, these ones. Involved rather reading and making simple choices to progress a story, but without any actual game mechanics being involved, as there were in Fighting Fantasy books. There wasn't even very much in the way of actual narrative branching either. The series was briefly revived by the Wizards of the Coast publishing division, Mirrorstone, in 2008, the revised print of the 34th Endless Quest adventure, Claw of the Dragon, where in the original reader's character was given a gender and a backstory. The new version followed the Fighting Fantasy practice of making the character gender neutral. Damn right. So here is an example of one of those. This is an Endless Quest book, number 7, Hero of Washington Square. It's from the producers of Dungeons & Dragons and isn't considered to be a Dungeons & Dragons book as such, but it has that nice banner across the top. Now, I had a lot more of these when I was younger. Fortunately, I got rid of them. But I'm in the process of collecting more, and let's just have a quick look. So, you get a mission briefing at the front here, which you are Bobby McCloskey, a New York City youth who suddenly finds himself thrust into the world of danger and intrigue. Your new friend Sam Brooke has been kidnapped by agents of a foreign government after entrusting you with a bag of mysterious green diamonds that seem to hold the secret the agents seek. What will you do? You will follow the spies to a moored yacht where you discover Sam under heavy guard, bound and gagged. Now you must make a choice. Okay, you could dump gasoline on the deck and light a fire. In the confusion, you could try to free Sam, turn to page 144. You could try to lock the Guardians in the cabin and find a policeman, turn to page 135. Or you could search for a way to sabotage the yacht so the spies can't escape, turn to page 13. Whichever path you pick, and you are sure to find adventure, you are sure to find it on the way to becoming the hero of Washington Square. Okay, so it's straight into it there. No rules as such, just suddenly immersed in the world. I love the texture, I like the format, I like the size of it, the spines are beautiful. Those weren't game books. Really nice publications, but they didn't have the same rule system at the front. that made Fighting Fantasy the first games book. So let's just finish off this bit here. One of the things that many of these revival publishers failed to realise was the importance of the artwork, commissioning immature picture book style illustrations or barely any illustrations at all, which automatically helped to put the Fighting Fantasy series ahead and shoulders above the rest. Fighting Fantasy artist Pete Nifton, other game books just weren't as good. Fighting Fantasy had the best writers and some of the best artists. Two rival series that got it the right way were the Tiger books, the Fighting Fantasy alumni Mark Smith and Jamie Thompson, and Joe Dever's Lone Wolf Adventures, illustrated by Gary Chalk. Both series imitate Fighting Fantasy books' game book structure, and it can be no coincidence that those involved in creation had all been employees of Jackson and Livingstone at Games Workshop at one stage or another. So let's have a quick look at one of the Lone Wolf books, which actually I really love. I love these books. This is number 2, Fire on the Water, illustrated by one of my favourite artists, Gary Chalk. These are actually really cool. I love these books, and for me, they weren't so much rivals. They were just extra content I could absorb, and I bought all of these when I was younger. That's there, and they have a series of rules at the front. You've got your Kai discipline, you've got combat endurance points. They were very careful not to make it too similar to Fighting Fantasy, but these followed in the same style. And it's a credit to Fighting Fantasy that books like this exist, because these were, again, an important chapter in the game book history. So there you have it. A whole range of game books appearing around about the same time, but really Fighting Fantasy were the ones that introduced the rules. So there you have it. Fighting Fantasy, the first game book, first solo player game book that kind of was inspired by Dungeons and Dragons, inspired by the Ender's Quest and those types of books, Tunnels and Trolls, and it took it to a whole nother level. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, click the thumbs up. If you haven't subbed already, it'd be awesome if you could. And I'll be back with some more RPG and games history very soon.